Oh, sweet patchwork of our days, stitched together in so many ways. With every thread, our lives entwined in this cool to love, our hearts aligned.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our new series, Festive Fancy Work. Are you ready for a new project? I am. Coming back. Y'all, I missed y'all last week. Last week we were on staycation, which was lovely. The weather was lovely. Everything about it was lovely. And all it really did was affirm the fact that I am so looking forward to retirement. But I still have a long ways to go before we get there. Not that I want to rush time away, but I am so looking forward to that. It was lovely, but I missed y'all. How's everybody doing? How's everybody's week going? I hope y'all had a fantastic week and last weekend. And today we're starting something new, Festive Fancy Work. What is Festive Fancy Work? It's a multitude of things all wrapped in one. Basically, it's an art quilt. It's a mystery quilt. It's a pixel quilt. If you will, it's a row by row quilt. Overall, it's a Christmas themed quilt, but I plan on leaving mine up all year round because it's going to be so pretty. All kinds of things. Becky said, you don't mean retirement from us, do you? I think even in my retirement, I might still come on YouTube, but a lot of like pattern designing, working every day, all this stuff, a lot of stuff will be different for me. But I still think I would come because who would want to just walk away from this awesome community, right? I don't think I'd be able to do that, but my life in general, everyday working, those things would look a lot different. What was I saying? Oh, it was fantastic. Fishing. We did lots of fishing and relaxing, and I did a lot of preserving. I freeze-dried some watermelon, y'all, and I made watermelon jelly for the first time. It's delicious. But I'm ready to dive back in and meet with you every Friday. We're going to work through this mystery quilt together. I hope that this is interesting for you. I hope you find this fun. And if this is not your thing, I still hope you come and hang out with us every week, right? Today's going to be a little bit longer because we're not only doing this quilt in an applique version, we're doing it in an embroidery version too. I'm offering two different ways, the best of both worlds. For those who like sewing applique, I don't want to put that finger down. For those who love applique, you're going to have fun with this. There's an applique version. And for those of you who love machine embroidery and have a 5x7 hoop, you might love doing it that way. So I did it that way too. So each week we're going to come and I'm going to reveal the pieces. Today, I had thought about doing a separate video for the embroidery version, but you know what? After coming back to work this week, it has been so busy that I didn't have time to make a separate video. So this is what we're doing. I just realized I couldn't see any of your questions. First, today I'm going to do the sewing version, the applique version. I'm going to walk through sewing down one block with you. I'm going to show you how to line up your pieces. I'm going to show you how to sew them down, and I'm going to show you how to join your rows. Very simple. And then we're going to switch modes, and I'm going to stitch a block out on the embroidery machine for those of you who are doing the embroidery version. And I'm going to show you how to join your blocks once you're done stitching them out. Okay? Janet says, I'm doing both. Me too, Janet. I am. I think I even have my mom on board to do the embroidered version. Isn't that exciting? Let me just back up, see if I've missed anything. Patsy says, I'm still thinking about this quilt. Maybe I will make up my mind after the first class. I know it will be beautiful. All right, Miss Patsy, hang tight. and I'm hoping you join us, but it's okay if you don't, right? Before we get started and dive in, I just want to share a little encouragement with you, okay? Because last week, not only did we go fishing a lot, and I did some canning and preserving, a lot of it. I canned like 36 jars of boiled peanuts, y'all. But I also spent some time in this room leisurely, not for work, not for Lisa Capen Quilts, but for Lisa. Do you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's hard to extinguish, am I in here for work or am I in here for pleasure? Most people see me in here and they automatically think I'm working, but a lot of the time I'm in here, it's for me. Do you know what I mean? I had some me time in this studio last week, and let me show you what I did because I am so dang proud of myself. And I just want to show you before we get started today. All right, so isn't this just fantastic? Now, many of you who just finished up the last series with me will recognize this, right? We just wrapped up the butterfly pixel quilt, which is a pixel quilt done totally different than the way we're doing festive fancy work, okay? But y'all remember I did block 1 with you, and then I decided to press my seams differently, and so this block was a total different size. So I redid my block number 1, right? Well, this block number 1 has been sitting on my long arm table, just hanging out for weeks and weeks. And my arch nemesis is zippers. Now, y'all, we're all different, right? When it comes to the quilting, sewing, crafting, whatever kind of creative world we love to be in, there's always things that we're going to struggle with. Where I might find I don't struggle with free motion quilting. I sit down at the machine. I know what to do. It comes very natural to me. Other people are intimidated or struggle with free motion quilting, right? For years and years and years, I struggled with binding. I avoided doing binding. I thought it was confusing. It was always difficult. I didn't understand it. And finally, I took the time and the discipline it took me to learn how to do binding. And now my bindings are beautiful. And I love doing a binding. Well, I don't love doing binding, but they're easy for me now, right? My arch nemesis has been zippers for years and years and years. And if you watched my Nana Bag videos, right, you heard me say that. But finally last week I was like, you know what, Lisa? You're never going to find them easy or get better at them if you just avoid them. So guess what I did? I repurposed block number 1 into a bag. Isn't that just lovely? And let me just tell you, I have made several bags since this one. And while I will say that zippers are not my arch nemesis any longer, I still struggle with them, but I'm getting better. And it's like anything, y'all. The more you do it, the better you get. And I am quite dang proud of myself. So take this as an encouragement, okay? If you are struggling with any part of quilt making, garment making, teddy bear making, whatever you do, crochet, knitting, but you have a desire to learn, just keep going. Just keep going, okay? I love that. Isn't that fantastic? Okay. Enough encouragement. Mimsy said, I told you zippers are easy. Mimsy, I'm still going to say zippers are not easy for me. They're just not. They're not easy for me. But I'm working through it. It's a process. And it's getting easier. It's getting easier. All right. What town does Lisa live in? I live in Matthews, Virginia, which, by the way, if you are local to me, tomorrow I'm in the Women's Club for Matthews, Virginia, and tomorrow our town is doing one of the biggest events. There's like 2 really great big events every year in our town. One is Mayfair and one is Market Days. And Market days started today, and tomorrow the Women's Club is doing a booth down in Market Days. So I'm going to bring some jelly, and then tonight I'm baking some bread, and who knows what else I'll bring. But I'll be down in the booth for the Women's Club. If you're local, stop by, say hello. Stop by and say hello. All right, so we're going to dive in, okay, because we're going to be here a minute. I'm going to try to work quickly on these blocks, but I'm not going to rush it, okay? We're going to start with the applique version, and I'm going to be real upfront with you, okay, because I like being transparent. The applique version is working with little baby pixels. All right, I'm calling these pixels. They're little 1/2-inch squares that have heat and bond on the back side of them. If the thought of cutting these out by hand stops you from doing this quilt, but you have a cutting machine, for $2 you can buy an SVG where you can cut 400 of these out within just a couple of minutes. Shameful little plug for my Etsy listing. Right, I created an SVG. That's how I cut these out. They're all perfectly cut, exactly 1/2 inch big, square, heat and bond line on the back side. If you don't have a cutting machine, apply the heat and bond line on the back side of your fabric, and then use a ruler and a rotary cutter. You're going to spend a few minutes and cut out a whole bunch of these little baby squares, right? I have an alternative way to make this quilt. We'll talk about it here in just a second. If this is like, heck no, I'm not going to do that, but I really would love to make this quilt and I don't have an embroidery machine, what can I do? Fabric paint. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind. Remind me to talk about it so I don't forget. So I have this little drawer right here full of 1/2-inch squares with my feature fabric, that fabric right there. The background, I'm using a natural color muslin. Both of these fabrics came from Marshall Dry Goods. I did put a link for Marshall Dry Goods down in the description box because I'm a huge fan of theirs. I'm not sponsored or endorsed by Marshall Dry Goods. I'm a happy customer from Marshall Dry Goods, right? But that's where I got these fabrics from. So 2 fabrics throughout, a background fabric and a feature fabric. And if you got the information sheet, it's going to tell you how much you need of each one, right? And your bag fabric and a binding and all that stuff, right? What else? We're going to cut our background fabric a little bit bigger than our finished block, right? This is a finished block. Excuse me. Can you tell I work by myself? I don't talk all day until I turn on the camera. The finished block measures 5.5 by 5.5 inches, like this, and it finishes at a 5-inch block. But we're working with blocks that are cut a little bit bigger so that when we sew them, if the stitching pulls them in any, we don't lose the size of our block. So we're going to cut them out a little bit bigger, 6.5 by 6.5. We're going to starch them. Can you tell that this has been starched? Here's my fabric for the embroidered version, and here's my fabric for the sewing or applique version. Do you see the difference in that? This one has no starch. This one has been starched. I do have a link for the starch that I used down in the description box too. It's a heavy starch. I really like it. And we're going to starch all of our fabrics before we start doing anything, putting down the pixels or sewing, okay? And that way, we don't necessarily have to have any kind of stabilizer on the back side of our block. See that? You see the stitching. There's no stabilizer. So starch your fabrics, okay, for the applique version. For the embroidered version, I'm skipping that step. I don't think it's really necessary. All right, so you'll see I have 3 blocks here done. Okay, and we're going to sew 1 block together so you can see how it's done. And here's how this quilt's going to work. Each week, I'm going to release 4 blocks. Like this is a block, that's a block, that's a block. It's missing a block right here. So each week you're going to get 4 parts of this quilt. Okay, so what you're going to find down in the description box is this. Now the link is going to bring you over to my Patreon right now because the applique version is free Thursday through Sunday each week. Monday morning, these 4 parts are going in the Etsy shop, and it's going to be $1.88 to purchase these 4 blocks. Okay? So if you're on the fence, like I know Patsy was saying, I'm deciding on what to do, but you're following along, download the blocks while they're free. But if you're someone who is watching and you're coming in halfway through, you can purchase up to where we are and then start downloading each week the free blocks. Do you know what I'm saying? Once this whole quilt series is done, I'm grouping everything together as one listing in the Etsy shop for the applique version. The embroidery version, there's a link for that down in the description box. That is $30. This week, when you buy it, there's already the first 4 blocks digitized that you're going to download. You can start stitching right away. Every Thursday from here on out, I'm going to be emailing you the 4 blocks. When I post these on Patreon, I'm sending out an email to those who have purchased this quilt pattern, and I'm sending you your digitized version of the 4 blocks. Okay, so keep an eye out for your email. And one thing I'll say about that real quick too, sometimes I get messages and people have problems downloading, and that's because the email in their Etsy is not their current email. If you haven't updated your email address in your Etsy, you might want to do that, because I'm going to be sending you your blocks for the embroidered version to whatever email is on that order. Okay, so if that's not right, we need to fix that. So next week when I send out blocks and you're waiting for them, I haven't sent them to your old email address. I think, have I covered everything? I don't think so, but Mary Jo says, I have never used starch before. Anything I need to know beforehand regarding how to take care of my iron? Will I need a special cleaner for it? Steam or no steam? Heat setting? I've been using this iron here, and you see that little gunk on there. This particular iron, I just use a magic eraser and just wipe it off, and that stuff comes right off. But using a pressing cloth will protect your iron a lot. But if you really drench your fabric with starch and use a pressing cloth, that starch is going to come through the pressing cloth too and get on your iron. So my recommendation, because all irons are different. Some have a stainless steel plate that's shiny silver. Some have this Teflon coating on it. You know, they're all different. I would look at the box and the instructions of your iron and see how to clean it, right? This one here, I just take a magic eraser, dampen it a little bit, and then just wipe that clean. Okay. This one goes up to like 350 degrees. I press almost everything at the highest heat setting it will go. But I will say, a very, very hot iron on a wet starched piece of fabric, the iron might stick to your fabric. Or if you have a dirty iron like this one, and you press a wet starched piece of fabric, this stuff might transfer onto your nice pretty fabric and make it dirty. So a pressing cloth is highly recommended. Okay. Yeah. If I had steam, I'd use it, but this little baby iron does not do steam. Do you starch if using paint? You know what? I would, because it's going to keep that fabric, it's going to make the fabric behave. So that when you're painting with a brush, right? And I don't really have a brush here. Let's just do a little example though. If you're painting with a brush, your fabric's going to behave. This is the starch piece, right? It's going to lay nice and stable for you. But if you're painting on a piece that is not starched, see how it wants to buckle up, it wants to move around more easily. This one does not. I would starch my fabric if I were painting it. And that's just me, okay? Let's just talk about the painting version for a second. And I'm going to turn my iron on and let that start warming up so we can get started. Here's what I would do. Now you can buy fabric paint that is already formulated to paint on fabric and be color fast and all of that stuff, right? I personally like to use acrylic paints and add a fabric medium to it. It opens up a whole new world of color options that I have available because I think I have every color known to man in little acrylic bottles of paint. And so that's what I like to do. Instead of using the fabric for applique and heat and bond and cutting these out and stitching them all down, instead, I would do this and paint in all of my pixels. Let it dry, heat set it, and then cut out my block to size. Do you know what that does? It eliminates the need to sew all of these pixels down. And you can still assemble your rows like we do. You can still assemble your quilt like we do. And you can still quilt through all of the painted area. That's an option. Okay? Now, while we're going to talk about applique as my iron is heating up, some will say, well, Lisa, can't you use heat and bond in the red package? It's a permanent heat and bond. And then you would not have to sew your pixels down. I'm going to say, yes, you can certainly do that, but don't plan on quilting this quilt. I do not recommend quilting over top of fabric that has heat and bond, the red package on the back. It is not formulated. It is not made to be sewn through. And so if you use it, you don't have to sew it down. But then if you're quilting and you quilt over top of it, you might have thread breakage. You might have skipped stitches. It's not really meant to be stitched through. So you could quilt all around your pixels, but don't plan on quilting through your pixels if you use a heat and bond in the red package. Okay? I have painted on fabric that I have treated with starch. The seahorse quilt that we did a lamp, a candle lamp that was painted, an art quilt several years ago. We also did like a stained glass quilt that was painted. I'm 95% sure I starched that fabric before I painted on it. 95% sure. What you would add to the paint, I don't have it close by, but some of my favorites are the GAC 900. It's a fabric medium. You can order that through Amazon. And there's also like a folk art fabric medium. You could use that. And you could get that at like Michael's, Hobby Lobby. Probably Walmart has a fabric medium. It would be grouped on the crafting aisle like at Walmart or Michael's. If you go to where all the acrylic paint is, the bottles of acrylic paint, right? It would be grouped in there and you have to look for it, but it'll say fabric medium on the bottle. All right, this is my starched one. That is not starched. We're going to move that out of the way. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with fusing these down. I'm going to say a light pad would be really helpful, but you can see, depending on your fabric, you might be able to see through your fabric, and a light pad might not be necessary for you, right? But I can see better with my eyes if I'm using a light pad. So we're going to start with the very first block. And I just want to talk about this real quick as we get started, since this is really the official first video. You're going to notice some numbers down in the corner of each block, right? Like this one says 1-1. Because they're all going to look slightly different from each other, and you're going to wonder, like, what block is this? So 1-1, this very first number tells you that this is the first row of the quilt, and we're starting on this quilt on the very top row. Okay, first row of the quilts, and the next number is where this block goes in that row. Each row is going to have 8 blocks going across from left to right. This is the very first block in the very first row. All right, you're going to notice this one will say 1-2. This is the first row. This is the second block in the first row. So that's what these numbers are down in the corner. Okay, you're going to find these numbers on every single block. And I'm going to just tell you, the embroidered version comes with the PDF of this. I would print this out too, just so you can see what it's going to look like when it stitches out, and so you can see where the numbers are. Right? Download the PDF. You don't necessarily have to print it off, but you can open up the PDF and see what block is this, right? So it might be helpful to have that too. All right, let me bring in my light pad. Hoping it don't blow out the camera too much. Ramsey said, I was always told to wash the sizing out before painting. You know what? Some fabric mediums might be different and might not absorb into the fabric with a sizing or a starch. That is true. Y'all know me, I buck against the system. This quilt is an art quilt. It's not a quilt that's going on our bed that you're probably going to wash 50 times in its lifetime. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of the times they'll say to wash the sizing out before printing on fabric or painting on fabric or coloring on fabric, because the sizing might not allow the fibers of the fabric to absorb the pigment color. Do you know what I'm saying? I've never pre-washed and I use starch. So have I just gotten lucky? Perhaps. But I've been doing it a long time. I'm going to say if you're used to pre-washing and you don't want to use starch, then don't. Right? When using muslin, should I wash it first? I did not. But if you're a pre-washer, wash it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. This came right out of the package from Marshall Dry Goods. I starched it and I'm sewing on it. All right, now see how much easier I can see through using a light pad. So if you have a light pad, you might find it helpful, right? Where's my little pixels? Here they are, and I'm going to grab a glue stick because I have found it, and I've done several blocks now. I've found it easier just to tack them in place with a little glue stick, and then I'm going to bond them all at one time, and we're moving over to the sewing machine. Oh, Sylvia said I got some heat and bond and they sent it in the red. They sent the red in the wrong package. It messed up my machine needle up. Yeah, the red one is not really meant to be sewn through. That's a stinker. It was in the wrong package. All right, here's my little baby pixel, right? Fabric side, heat and bond light side. I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue. Just like that, not even covering the whole thing, just on the it, like that. Like half of the pixel has glue on it. It's just enough just to keep this in place. I'm gonna place all these pixels down. Now I'm gonna say, this is gonna be a piece of art. I'm working through this quickly so that we can move on through all the steps. I would encourage you to put on an audiobook, a mystery series on YouTube, Pandora Radio, whatever you enjoy listening to in the background. Maybe you just like silence. But I would highly encourage you to take your time with this process, because this is the feature of the quilts. Each one of these pixels I drew out to form a design. And the nature of the design, we kind of want all these pixels to be nice and straight. So I would encourage you to take your time with it and to keep them as straight as possible. Do you know what I'm saying? I think you'll enjoy the results of it much better if you keep them as straight as possible. And we're just going to work through just like so. Now you could just hold it in place and fuse each one individually, right? But I find working on my light pad, I can see much better. And so that's why I'm doing it this way. All right. Whichever way works best for you, please do it that way. I have found that with most anything, there's never a true right and wrong. And what works for me might be different for you. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're doing something and you're sharing that with somebody and they say, oh, you're doing it wrong, you shouldn't do it that way, tell them I said you could. Okay? Tell them I said you could do it that way. Whoops, see, I moved it. I should bring in my little magnets, because this, one of the advantages of this little Glue Mini is it has built-in magnets, and I could magnet this in place, but I did not think about it. And I don't want to get up to go find the magnets. So there's that. But just let me tell you, if you enjoy things like diamond art, I think you're going to really love this. If you love the look of cross stitch, counted cross stitch, you're going to love this quilt. You're going to love it. And I'm trying to keep the nature of the mystery as much as I can, but also share some details with you just to keep you kind of excited about the quilt as we get started. When I mentioned it was a row by row quilt, what I technically mean by that is what this is going to make. This is only a portion of a design. I mean, you already figured that out, right? But what this makes forms down below it, but it does not repeat itself throughout the quilt. This quilt will reveal itself row by row. There's all kinds of designs in this quilt. so the top row will not repeat itself down below. And I think that is so cool. All right, Lisa, grab a magnet for the love of magnets. I don't have my Caterpillar magnets close by, but I have these. The finished quilt, Jean, is going to be 40 by 40. You could tape it. Yes, you absolutely could. Instead, I'm going to grab one of these magnets. I'm going to find, all right, a magnet spot. All right, I'm moving right down here. Because that's annoying. There. Yeah, a row by row quilt. What happens is I get glue on my fingertips and then it touches the fabric and moves the fabric because I'm a little messy. Plus I'm trying to move pretty quickly. The embroidered part is going to take about 19 minutes to stitch out. Maybe a little less. I can't remember for this particular block. Gluing, gluing, gluing. I'm trying to move quickly, but I'm also trying to be accurate, right? Because this block is going in my quilt and I want it nice and straight. Yeah, so last week I saved Harlan's life. I don't think I mentioned that. That man. We went fishing several times. If you've ever been in my area, in the Hampton Roads area, on the peninsula, 757, Virginia, you know, have you ever heard of the Coleman Bridge? It's a bridge, it's a drawbridge that goes from York County to Gloucester, Virginia. Well, I grew up in this area my whole life. I've gone over the Coleman Bridge. That one's got a little raggedy edge. I don't want to use that one. I've gone over the Coleman Bridge my entire life. Maybe 1,000 times in my life. But I've never been underneath of the Coleman Bridge. So the very first day of vacation, that's exactly what we did. We went underneath of the Coleman Bridge. And I don't know why I thought that was it, like, so cool. It was so cool. I don't know why. I just think that that was so fascinating. So we did that. I caught a 25-inch red drum. I outfished Harlan this week. One day we fought the tide and the waves, and we went across the Mob Jack Bay and picked up my son at a pier close to his house after he got off of work, and we went fishing for a little bit. Harlan dropped his fishing rod over the side of the boat and tried to reach to grab it and fell overboard. We do not have stairs or a little door to get in our boat, so I basically saved his life getting him back in the boat. All right, we have one more little pixel And my iron turned off, so let me turn it back on. The good news is it's still hot. We won't have to wait for it to heat up. Here's my last pixel for this block. So you see what I did, right? Now, if you can see through your fabric easily without using a light pad, you could just work right on your pressing mat with one of those little clover irons, right? And just fuse them right in place and forgo the glue stick. This is what I'm doing because I can see that so much better. And I want it to be straight and accurate. I don't want it to just be guesstimating. Do you know what I'm saying? It's going to make a difference. All right. Ooh, Steffi says, today I chose some fabrics for the project. Yay. She's going to post them maybe tomorrow. All right. So there's my pixels. I'm going to just fuse them right in place, right? Keep in mind, this fabric is cut at 6.5 by 6.5. We're going to square this up when we're done stitching, okay? And we're going to let that cool off for just a second because it is hot. All right, so you're going to do all 4 blocks just like this. This is what they're going to look like. Now, because this is heating by night, we're not washing this quilt. I mean, I wouldn't wash an art quilt that's hanging up on the wall. Maybe one time in its life if it got dusty or something, you know, but this is in the nature of this quilt. It's not really a bed quilt. But even if this quilt never got washed, I know from experience with Heat and Bond Light because I used to use it back in 1998. And I didn't sew down a lot of my applique edges back then. Even if a quilt doesn't get washed, over time, it is possible that the edges will lift. Humidity in your house, different temperatures in your house, sunlight. Just over time, it is possible that the edges will lift if you don't sew them down. So we're going to sew them down, right? Because we want this quilt to last forever. Now, before we move to the sewing machine, let me just tell you how I sew mine down, the stitches that I use. I feel like it's not the 100% rule. So if you want to use a different stitch in your machine, I hope you do. I'm using a tiny little zigzag stitch. If you use a satin stitch, really close together stitches. If you use a satin stitch that is real tight together, lots of stitches going down, even though this is starched and it has some body and structure to it, a satin stitch, I would throw a tearaway stabilizer behind here. I didn't want to do that. So I'm going with a zigzag stitch. Zigzag stitch moves by a little faster than a blanket stitch does. Yeah, I think it does. But we need all edges of each one of these blocks sewn down. So maybe for you, you want to do a zigzag stitch along the outside edge, but all of these lines on the middle, maybe you choose to do something different that's faster, but every single side of these squares need to be sewn down, okay? So I'm just going to tell you my settings as we move over to the sewing machine. If you want to try these out on your end, you might like them. You might need to tweak them based on your fabric, your needle size, your thread you're using, your particular machine. But I'm going with a zigzag stitch and a 2.4 width and a 0.8 on my length. Okay, those are my settings. I've written it down so that all my blocks are exactly the same. Okay, and on this page, there's a section for your notes. Whatever settings you decide, I would write it down. This is a good place for it because you want all your blocks to look the same, no matter what you decide to do. Okay? But this zigzag is loose enough. It's close enough together to do the job, but it's loose enough where it doesn't bunch up my fabric and I don't need to use an additional stabilizer other than the starch that I've applied to the fabric. Okay, so let me move over here. Let me get a zigzag stitch, 2.4 and a 0.8. That's set up. I personally picked a thread color that blends in with this fabric so that I don't see it. I don't want my outside stitching to be a focal point of this quilt. I want the pixels in the design to stand out. Now you might decide on your quilt you do want it to be a focus point and use a contrasting thread. That, for you as the quilt maker, you get to make that decision, right? I wanted my stitching to just be utilitarian and to blend in. So I'm using a red thread. You can see, like, it doesn't really show up. Of course, if you're in person and you're close up to it, you'll see it. But overall, if you take a step back, it just blends in. I'm using the same exact thread in the bobbin, because if my tension is off ever so slightly, I don't want to see any pops of a bobbin thread or anything different on the front. So I'm using the same exact thread in my bobbin. Okay. Now we're going to move over and I'm going to just show you. I like to work continuously as much as I can without breaking thread. I start at one end and I just travel along. And each one of these blocks is different. So your game plan or plan of approach for sewing down the blocks is going to vary from block to block. But for each block, I sort of make it a game. How much can I sew down without having to break the thread and make a jump? And depending on how fast you sew, this might take you a little minute, right? The more comfortable you get, the less nervous you are, you'll start to get faster. Now we're going to move over here to my Juki. And you also notice I have my open toe foot on. That helps me see. But because I'm using a zigzag stitch, I need a foot that is open enough so that the needle can travel left to right, right? I prefer to use my open toe foot when doing stuff like this. I'm wondering, I don't think I can zoom in any closer to that without like taking a minute. So unfortunately this is about as close as we can get today, but I'm just going to work and you're going to follow along. I'm going to try to go through it quickly, probably faster than I ordinarily would, so that we can move on to the embroidery section, right? But my advice would be, don't try to go as fast as I'm going today, okay? I ordinarily wouldn't go this fast. I would take my time and enjoy doing it. Applique is like my favorite method of quilt making, and I don't like rushing through it. To me, it's a relaxing part of my day. For video purposes, I'm going to try to move through pretty fast. This is the most talking I've done all week. Okay. We're going to pick a spot. Pick wherever you want to start, and that's where you're starting, okay? I'm going to start right there, and I'm just going to try and work through as much as I can before stopping. All right, so we're going to come to the first group where we have several blocks all joined together. Your sewing approach might look different than mine. I'm going to go all the way around this group and then worry about how I'm going to sew down those middle seams because everything needs to be sewn down. One reason why I chose a zigzag stitch that's 2.4 wide is because if I travel with my needle in the middle of these blocks coming together, it's hitting both sides. So it's stitching down this block and then it's stitching down this block. If you decide on a zigzag stitch that is less than 2.4 width, it might be that you have to travel those middle seams 2 times to get the blocks on both sides. Do you know what I'm saying? See, coming right there, I haven't yet sewn down this very bottom one, but I think I'm going to go ahead and stitch down the 4 edges right in the middle and then travel around. Because my zigzag stitch is just wide enough to hit all of the edges, as if I travel in the middle, I can just make that inner square and hit all of the edges all the way around. It's almost like a game. But you see, I hit all of those edges going right around that middle square, right in the middle. And now I'm coming along the bottom side and getting all those edges. We are almost right back to where we started. I'm going to do a little tiny back stitch, even though I have a thread cutter that will not on the back. Don't really want to build up the thread there. Do you know what I'm saying? Just lock it. So now all of the edges of those are sewn down. Okay. Now I'm going to try to move through this pretty quickly. I'm going to take a sip of my drink. Ruth has a question. Hold on one second. I didn't finish my comment. How do I convert it to a PES format? Luckily, Ruth, if you purchase the embroidered version, it comes with all the file formats you need. So it has EXP, HUS, JEF, PES, EXP, XXX, DXF. I think there's like 8 different file formats for all the different embroidery machines. So you don't have to convert anything. You would purchase the embroidered version, and then in the download for 1-1, block 1 of row 1, you'll open the folder and grab the PES for the first block and load that right in your machine. If you are digitizing the PDF on your own, then you'll need digitizing software and stuff like that, right? But I've digitized the quilt, so it should be pretty easy. You'll just open the file and get your PES file out of there. I've never used an SVG file on my brother machine. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of videos here on YouTube showing you how to do that. I have a couple of them. The cool thing about the embroidered version, you don't need a feature fabric. You don't have to cut out the little squares. All you need is a background fabric, some batting, stabilizer, and embroidery thread. That's all you need. This cup is so dumb. When I take a sip out of it, it just drools down my face like there's a loose gasket or something. All right. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but I want you to see it because I know lots of y'all are doing this version. And you're going to be like, well, how did you handle these long lines here in the middle? So I want you to see it, okay? And I'm going to join this block. I'm going to square it up when I'm done stitching, and I'm going to join it to my row. I want you to see all of that. So if you're bored with this part, now's a good time to take a potty break, go grab a drink, a snack, something. Because I'm going to sew down this part, but I'm going to try to move through pretty quickly. All right. The embroidered version, there's a link for it down in the description box. It's going to bring you straight over to Etsy. The embroidered version of this quilt is $30. It's kind of expensive, but it's so worth it. It's going to quilt and stitch everything for you. You just sew the blocks together. Do you know what I'm saying? But you won't find that on Patreon. There's a link for it down in the description box. Okay? All right, so on this one, you know what? I'm going to start, I'm going to just, how am I going to do this? I'm going to do all the long lines first. The inside lines. And I'll even cut the thread. And I'll come back up here and do this long line. Then I have two little short lines right there, and a long line there. Let's do this long line. The shorter lines, I feel like I can get those as I'm working around. Do you know what I'm saying? These longer ones. That zigzag stitch, when it goes left to right, because the fabrics are butted up right next to each other, it's going in both of those fabrics. All right, and so while we're right there with the needle down, holding that in place, I'm going to snip all the little threads on top that are loose, and I'm going to start working my way right around. Which means I might travel over some places I've already stitched. That's another reason why using a thread that blends in is kind of nice, because you won't see that so much. Right there is a little seam right there that I haven't done. And so let me show you how I'm going to get that seam and then come back. I'm just going to flip the thing around and travel right back over it. I know it's hard to see because I'm not real close up and the thread just blends in. So I know it's hard to see. But you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when you go to sew your first block. You'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. There's that seam. Now I'm going to just travel right back up. And continue instead of having a whole bunch of loose threads everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? Pull down and then hit the reverse button and back right up. My thread blends in so well that I actually have to feel it to see if I've gotten those seams or not. And a good indication, if you're always if you're ever wondering, you can turn it over and you can just double check. Is everything showing up? Is everything stitched down, right? So that is stitching it down. And I tried to work pretty quickly, but I'm also trying to be neat because this is going in my quilt. Do you know what I'm saying? Are your stitches falling off of the little pixels? My needle, the zigzag stitch, right? Left to right, left to right. When it's in the right position, it is touching the fabric, but it's actually going in the background fabric. So it's right next to, like sometimes, depending on how neat, I was trying to be fast, right? Sometimes it's more in the background fabric. But when the needle is in the right position, I want it to be next to, touching the background fabric, but landing in the background fabric, touching the pixel. I hope I didn't make that confusing. Mimsy, I did get a hold of Hazel. She's having a little bit of rough time, so if y'all all want to pray for Miss Hazel, that would be lovely. I did get in touch with her. Some words of encouragement. You know, she's on Creative Crew. You could send her a friend request. You know, if you go to Creative Crew and in the search bar you type in Hazel, she'll pop up because she's in Creative Crew. I would send her a message, a friend request, and just reach out to her. I think she would really like that. So there's our block. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give it a slight little press, but I just want to show you the starch in the fabric and mixed with the zigzag stitch that is kind of close, but not super, super close. You can kind of see it a little bit more on the back side. You know what I'm saying? Even in areas where I traveled, the starch did a really nice job of predominantly keeping my background fabric flat without a lot of puckering. The heat and bond on the back side of the pixels also acts as a stabilizer, helping to keep everything flat. But, you know, it might not be a bad idea just to give your block a press when you're done. See that? Just like that. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can square this up when you're done, right? I've done it several different ways. I've already made blocks for next week because I had to work ahead a little bit. So I've done this several different ways. I'm going to show you a couple different ways, and you're going to pick the way that works best for you, okay? One way is to bring back your light pad. Because we need this to be squared up as accurately as possible, okay? I'm going to turn that back on. We're going to match this back up the best that we can, the straightest that we can. And one of the ways that I've done this is I've taken a Pilot friction pen and I've marked my corners. Like this is the inside seam and this is the outside seam. This space in the middle, that's our seam allowance. Oh, you can't see because of the light pad. That's our seam allowance. Let me turn this down a little bit. Maybe you can see it better that way. There you go. See that? Marking my corners. This is our seam allowance. So on some of my blocks, I've done it this way. Just mark in my corners like so. This will disappear with a little bit of heat, so I'm not worried about marking up my fabric. And this block actually falls right on that corner, see that? And it wouldn't hurt to give yourself some indications in the middle. The more accurate you are in squaring up your blocks and sewing them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, the more accurately everything's going to line up as you start joining your rows, right? So some blocks, like this block here, this part of this design was cut off and you don't actually work on it until you start this block. But you still want these pixels to line up as straight as possible. So that's why I'm saying paying attention to those things, you'll have an easier time of your design lining up, right? So now you can use a 5.5 inch ruler and square this up. You can use a regular ruler to square this up, right? I've done it both ways. But now you have a guide to help you, right? I'll just use this ruler for this one so you can see how that works. And on the embroidered version, I'll use a 5.5 inch ruler. You can see both ways, right? So there's that. And I much prefer standing up and looking down. This way I'm kind of looking sideways. I don't think I'm as accurate working like this sideways view, but the reason why I'm trimming now and not just cutting my blocks at 5.5 inches to start with, because what if that zigzag stitch that we just did on all those tiny little pixels, what if that drew the fabric in a little bit on this side? Now your edge is not exactly straight, right? So now we'll have nice straight seam allowances to sew everything together with a true 5.5 inch block, right? And then just to join the blocks on this version, it's just like putting together quilt blocks, right? This is 2, 3, 4, 1. So we'll put them together like this and bring that over to the sewing machine and sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, we'll do that together. It's only going to take a second. But I do not want to join the blocks with red thread, so give me a second. I think you might see the red thread through my background. I'm not sure. Let me pull that out of there. Fortunately, I thought ahead and I have my bobbin and my thread right here. Sometimes I don't care and I would use red thread if I didn't think it was ever going to show through my fabric. But on this it might. So let's just take a second and switch it out. Sometimes Dolly moves right behind my chair without me knowing it. And I move my chair. And I'm always scared I'm going to hurt her. All right, and I'm going to switch my foot because I don't like doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance with my open toe foot. All right, 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to bring this over. Then we're going to reveal how accurate we were. Look, point to point. That's exciting. No pressure during a live. And you know what? I've been pressing my seams to the side. You could press your seams open if you want to. But I'm thinking I want to nest my rows if possible. Nest those seams. So I've been pressing all my seams in the same direction. And then the next row, row 2, below it, I'm going to try to press my seams in the opposite direction so I can nest my seams in the middle. That works for me, but if you want to press these seams open, you could certainly do that. I'm just going to get it started on the back side in the direction I want that seam to go. And then I like to flip it over and press it from the front too. Nice and flat. Now, if you're way, way, way off, if your pixels are way, way, way off, I'm not opposed to getting a fabric marker. Don't use a Sharpie. A Sharpie bleeds in fabric I've learned that. But get a fabric marker in the color of your fabric and do little touch-ups. Who's gonna know? Or you could pick it apart and resew it, right? But that's what, you know, I was saying from the very beginning, the more accurate and the straighter you place your pixels on that little grid on the print off, the more accurately things are going to line up, right? Now, inevitably, if you look real close, and I'm just going to show you this, if it shows up, the edge of this pixel should be closer to that seam allowance. The same way this one is sewn into that seam allowance because it was right on the edge. This one is a little off, but I'm not going to do anything with that. In the big picture, it looks fine, right? If this pixel was all the way down here, I would pick apart that seam and try to fix it. Do you know what I'm saying? You kind of just want the pattern to go across like that, without being too like OCD about it. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is what your first 4 blocks of the applique are going to look like. Okay? Now we're going to switch over to the embroidered version. All right. And I already have that loaded in the embroider machine. We don't need our little pixels, so let me put you back in the little cabinets. But what we do need is a 5x7 hoop or larger if you like working in a bigger hoop, right? You can do that. Let me straighten up a little bit so I can focus. Here's my dime hoop. It's a 5x7 magnetic hoop. It's one of my favorite hoops. And we're going to hoop some no-show mesh. All right, that's what this is. I have a link for this down in the description box. Let me just show you this. I bought this on Amazon from HBI. You get 100 sheets. And this fits a 5x7 hoop, 4x4 hoop, anything smaller than a 5x7, right? 100 pre-cut sheets. We're using one of these sheets. So This pack is like $19.99. It'll do this quilt and a whole lot more. Okay. So I have one layer of no-show mesh. Let me take apart my hoop. Let's put some no-show mesh in there. Let's get this hooped up. I'm going to slide that right out. And then I'm going to tighten this stabilizer up nice and tight. And then you're going to pre-cut your background fabric. I'm using 2 different thread colors, okay? What's going to happen, and let me bring over the embroidered version so you can see that, okay? This is 3 blocks of the embroidered version. Now this is just fabric, batting, no-show mesh, and thread. Now I wanted a black and white version of this quilt, right? I have a red and white version. I have a black and white version. I think that's awesome. The embroidered version is going to do this cross-hatching gridded quilting for you. Okay. Now, if by chance you don't want it to do that, you can skip past it. But kind of the beauty of doing the quilt this way is that your design is done perfectly and it's quilted for you, right? So the background quilting part, I used a thread that blends in with the background fabric. So you don't really see the thread. You see the quilting, you see stitches, but the thread is not contrasting to the color of my background fabric. After the quilting step, I change out my bobbin and my top thread to my accent color. This is all just stitching, okay? I'm using a black 60 weight, I think this is a bro thread. I guess it's a bro thread. I think that's what it is. Just a 60 weight thread on top. And I'm using a black bobbin thread, right? This is bobbin thread. It's like what, 60 weight or something like, or 40 weight, 60 weight. This is a 40 weight, 60 weight. All that stuff confuses me. This is just normal bro thread, embroidery thread, bobbin thread. These are not the same. You could use the same. You could use a white bobbin thread, right? What I'm trying to say is that I do one color change. The background quilting is one color. Your featured fabric or design thread is another color. Okay. So right now I have my background color thread in the top and the bobbin because that's what we're going to use first. I have my no-show mesh hooped. I have a piece of quilt batting. This is Quilter's Dream, but in some of my blocks I've used Warm and Natural. They're both sort of the same thickness. So whatever I have scraps of, that's what I'm using, as long as they're all about the same thickness. Do you know what I'm saying? You want a piece that's slightly bigger than your design, so like 6 by 6 or even a little bit bigger. I'm going to lay that in the hoop. Here's my fabric. It's a little bit bigger than 5.5 by 5.5. It's like 6.5 by 6.5. And I didn't starch this piece, right? I'm going to lay that right there. And we're going to move over to the embroidery machine. Thank you, Chris. I'll get turned all around. Thank you so much. Chris said embroidery thread is usually 40 weight and bobbin is 60 weight. Isn't that confusing? Why do I always get confused by that? Like the higher the number, the thinner the thread. I try to remember that. Thank you. All right, we're going to switch over to, wow, the sun's really coming in there. Hold on a second. Let me get this on the hoop and see what you can see. I have to make some changes because the afternoon, the sun is coming in. I think we're good for a minute. The needle is threaded. Let me load my design in here. All right, so I just willy-nilly put the batting and the fabric in. I always like to double check before I just start stitching. I'm going to check the boundaries of this design and make sure I don't need to move the batting or the fabric, and that there is at least a good 1/4 of an inch all the way around this design. Okay, so I'm going to just check that before I hit stitch, right? I'm going to move to the top of the design. I've got a good 1/2 inch of extra fabric there. I'm going to move to the bottom of the design. Oh, I've got a good inch at the bottom. And I know my fabric's coming to the edge of the hoop on both sides. I'm good there. So now I'm ready to start stitching. Okay. Now the first thing it's going to do is a basting stitch all the way around the edge. I just realized you can't see me. Hold on a second. Here I am. You don't need that. And let me move these boxes. I've been sitting here talking to you and you couldn't even see me. Let's move myself down here. And we'll get rid of this black box. You don't need to see that. There we go. I've been like talking to you like this and you can't even see me. What was I saying? The first thing it's going to do is a basting box, and it's going to baste down the fabric and the batting to the stabilizer. And then we're kind of hands off after that, right? But as it's stitching down that basting box, I'm going to keep a close eye on it. I might even have my little chopstick here. And you might even want to slow down the machine for a second as it's basting everything around, right? And then it just does its thing. The basting is done. Hopefully this is not too wobbly. It's going to look a little wobbly because my camera's like this on a long arm. A long extension arm right there. See it? Now it's going to immediately go into the quilting of this. So whatever thread you want to use for the quilting, have that loaded because it's going to use that quilt to do the basting box and immediately start quilting. Okay? Like I said, it's that time of the day. She knows because we do Zooms on Patreon, and y'all know a certain time of the day, I just get, my camera's a whitewash. And you don't see me for about 15 minutes. We're going into the fall, so like every day it's a little bit different, the time that comes in. Wow, 5 o'clock. Thank you for hanging out with me. I guess should have said at the very beginning, if you're doing the embroidery version only and you're watching on the replay, skip to this part. Right? But do you see how perfectly it's doing the quilting? Isn't that lovely? And if you're a multitasker like me, sometimes I just like to sit and watch it stitch. But sometimes I'm really busy, so I can set it to do this and I'm doing something else. Most of the time, though, I'm captivated and I sit here and watch it. I wish I had a straw because this cup is on my last nerve. Just like that, our block is quilted. Now I'm going to take the hoop off because I'm going to change my bobbin thread and the top thread. Don't want to lose you. And then, where's my snips? There's the top thread. And let me just speed this up just a little bit. I'm stitching at 700 miles per hour. Hopefully I shouldn't have any thread breaks. It should be good. If I get a thread break with this thread, I'll slow it down. But what you're going to notice in the design, if you take a look at the file, is that it's showing more colors and color stops than what I'm telling you. And that's to avoid long jump stitches from one area traveling to the next. So in your design, you might see a group of blue pixels, light blue, and a dark blue group. And then you might see one little lone light blue pixel or a dark blue pixel. You're not changing thread colors. That's just to tell the machine to stop and cut the thread cleanly and move over to the next pixel without creating long jump stitches. Okay? You're going to use the same thread throughout everything. It looks a little bouncy, but not terribly bad. So the stitch that it's doing is a fill stitch. And I just want to talk about the fill stitch for a second because I did not make this fill stitch super, super dense. I made it a little bit on the lighter side. One reason, it stitches out much faster. The second reason is your block is not super stiff from the density of the fill stitches in those pixels, right? It's going to use a lot less thread this way. And up close, it almost gives it more of a hand-done appearance, right? What does he have in the back of his truck? A surfboard? He has a surfboard in the back of his truck. Harlan just got home. What was I saying? So it's not going to be completely dense and covered 100%. If you get up close to it, like I'm looking at this right now, I can see through some of the stitching. That's the look that I was going for, okay? I want it to look kind of hand done. The thing is though, you can see this right here. If you step away from it, it looks filled in completely. So if you're stitching this out and you're like, is it supposed to look like that? Yes. For one, it's going to save you some money and some time, right? But up close, I kind of want it to look like, did she do the, you know, if you have this quilt on display and someone walks up close to it, they're going to almost be like, did she do this by hand? How did she do this? I don't have to reveal that the embroidery machine did that. Do you know what I'm saying? Let them guess for a minute. That's what I was trying to achieve with this, especially since the overall design of this quilt is going to have the appearance of hand fancy work. I didn't want it super, super dense. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's going to go through and stitch out all these pixels for us. And we're just sitting here. And that's going to take a minute. But I want you to see how I'm going to square this one up. I'm going to square it up with a 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch ruler, which might be the way that you want to square up your blocks, even if you're doing them in the applique version. But I also want to show you the embroidered version is quilt as you go, right? It's quilted. You could even have a back fabric floating underneath your hoop if you wanted to. But I want to show you what I'm doing to join these blocks so that the seams are not really, really thick. Okay, I'm going to trim the batting away from the block after it's squared up. And I want you to see that. So we're going to hang out as this stitches out, right? Because I want you to see that in case you've never done it before and you're wondering how to do that. Since this is the first video, we're not going to show this every week, right? Next week, my blocks are already done. We're going to come together and I'm going to join the first part of the row to the second part of the row. A seam, and we're done. Right? So, Peggy says, I think I like that better than placing the little pieces of fabric on a grid. Will you be showing how you would do the painting way? Set up. You know what? Next week is going to be a much shorter week. I'm not opposed to showing you how to do that. I'm not making a whole quilt that way. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm doing 2 versions myself. But I think it would be a good idea to show that because if I didn't have an embroidery machine, I'd be looking at doing another version painted. So where's my calendar for next week? Join me next Friday. I'll show you. Show a painted version of blocks. We will certainly do that next week. I probably won't paint the whole thing, but I might. It might go by pretty fast. In a whole block, you know. And you know what? That opens up a whole world of possibilities because not only do you have fabric paint or acrylic paint with fabric medium, you have Inktense pencils, you have fabric crayons, you have fabric markers. So, I mean, I think that it just opens up a whole possibility of alternative ways to do this quilt without messing with the little fabric pixels or without the use of an embroidery machine. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm all about that because I consider myself, what do you call it? Not a hodgepodge. There's a word for it. I like working in a whole bunch of different mediums. And that would open up a whole bunch of different possibilities. Chris says, my experience was both at the same time. Smacked down with the arm and foot and drove the needle in before it stopped due to a broken needle. Needless to say, a new language is invented. Don't tell me you stitched on your finger. Is that what happened? Did you do that? That is like one of my fears. All right, so the machine stopped, right? And it's moved down towards the bottom of the block where the next group of pixels is going to be. That's when you see the light blue and the dark blue in your design. We're not changing the thread color. It's just not creating one large jump stitch that might get stitched over top of. And we don't have to trim any jump stitches, right? That's all it is. Gail says, my son and grandchildren gave me an embroidery machine for your birthday. I'll be doing the embroidery pet. Get out of here, Gail. That is so exciting. Happy birthday. I am so dang excited for you. I just, yesterday was my mom's birthday. Y'all won't believe what I made. Part of my mom's birthday present, I made her a bag. I sublimated photos that she took onto fabric, and I made her a purse out of it with 2 zippers and inside pockets. I'm so dang proud of that. Anyway, my mom also likes to do lots of different things. She is really into card making. And, yeah, so I brought my Bernina over there, and I'm like, you're going to learn how to do freestanding lace on an embroidery machine. So now she has the hoops, the thread, the machine, everything is over there for her. And I'm halfway convinced her into doing the embroidered version of this quilt. She's like, I'm not a quilt maker. I said, you don't have to be. The machine does all the work for you. Oh no, you did. Back in 1997, before all the YouTube videos advised me not to put my fingers in the sewing field. You know what? I think we're all guilty of that, though. I find myself putting my fingers in there. I try to be in the habit of using something like I have this, but sometimes I just find myself holding down the edge of the fabric with my fingers. I think we're all guilty of it, but it's not a... Try not to do it, you know? I don't want to mess around and find out. You know what I'm saying? That's a nice way of saying it. I don't want to mess around and find out. That's a good way to mess up all your plans for the day. And probably your plans for the next day, because you're going to be sore. You know what? Let's just take the lid off of this. Oh. Tired of wiping that off my face. Oh, it looks like several of y'all are interested. All right, y'all join me next week. My blocks are already done and sewn together for next week. So we can take some time. We'll experiment with some different stuff. And maybe it'll give you an idea or spark an idea of alternative ways to do this quilt. Just stitching along. Here comes Harlan. I don't ever recall having a conversation about a surfboard or a windboard. Harlan, come here a minute. Let's put him on the spot, y'all. All right, come here. Just let you know we're live on YouTube. When you were driving on the road, like, and you made a turn right here, what was in the back of your truck?
Stuff.
What is that?
A sailboard.
A sailboard. I don't remember ever having a conversation about a sailboard.
It was at the DAV for $19.
$19. Dude, your medical bills will cost more than $19. You are not in your 20s anymore. $19. I'm behaving myself. If we were in a Zoom, that conversation might have gone differently. Trying to be nice on YouTube. You know what, though? He forgets, like, although he can do a lot of stuff I can't do. He's only 5 years younger than me. He can do a lot of stuff that my body says absolutely negative. He can do a lot of stuff. But he's not 19 anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? He just bought a wind surfboard thing. Here's the good news about it between you and me. He has ADD, toy ADT, right? This week he wants to kayak. Go get a kayak. Next month he wants a boat. He got a boat. Has he used his kayak in 2 years? No. So let's just pray that it's the same way with this. Like, he'll try it out and be like, that's not as fun as I thought it was going to be. That's a little jumpy to watch on the screen, isn't it? Fortunately, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Unfortunately, because I have really high ceilings and a glass door right there, mounting another camera anywhere other than on my desk is kind of impossible. So it's a little jumpy. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you discuss your fabric purchases? Let him have his sailboat. Okay, Chris. Well, when I saw the sailboat, I was thinking like $500. If I was going to spend $500 on fabric, yes, I would say, you know, is it in the budget? $500. You should have seen how big this thing was hanging up. But $19, I'm okay with that. I'm more concerned about his health more than the money. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if he were to fall and get hurt, guess who's cutting 2 acres of grass and taking care of 47 chickens? That's what I'm not really so much worried about the money as is he going to be laid up for 2 weeks? You know what I mean? Darlene said take a video of him the morning after he does it for the first time. The man just had knee surgery like a year ago, okay? Let's not try to have to redo that. Yeah, she said he'll use muscles he never knew he had. I am positive about that. Dude, sometimes I hang laundry and I use muscles that I forgot I had. I just don't want him to get hurt. Like, it's stitching right along. So, this disclaimer, what you see stitching here looks different than what I stitched on the machine. This is a different block. Okay, so you're gonna be like, why? I'm doing block 1 on my embroidery machine, but it looks different. This is a different block. I just want you to see the process, okay? This is actually part of next week's blocks. You're getting a sneak peek preview, okay? Hazel's here. Mincy, Hazel's here. Just dropping in to say hi to all you lovely people. Hazel, it is so good to see you. Everybody was asking about you earlier. Praying for you, Miss Hazel. And I told Minzy she should reach out to you on Facebook and send you a friend request. So if you start getting some friend requests from people in the creative crew, that's why I told them they might want to send you a friend request, okay? It would be good to pop in and check in on you every once in a while. Yeah, see, Minzy said, does he still play the cello? No. The cello's collecting dust for 3 years now. Not touched that cello. It's taking up space in my bedroom. I can't say anything though, because I mean I do the same thing. Let's try to think of something. I'm looking around my craft room to keep it craft related. I have a violin. I haven't played my violin in a long time. I have a flute. I've played the flute since we've moved here. I have a kayak. I haven't kayaked in a long time. I get it. We're getting close to the end, in case you're wondering. So on this particular block, it's doing this one group down in the bottom left corner, and then there's 2 lonely pixels on the right side of the block. It's going to cut the thread right now. It's going to move over there, stitch out 1 pixel and stop, and then stitch out another pixel and stop. So this design, this particular block, whoops, it's going to look like it has 4 different colors. But you see, I'm not changing the thread color. I'm just moving. Now it's going to stitch out this one little lonely pixel right here. We wait. I'm hungry. 5:25. It's my supper time. It's gonna stop and move and 1 more pixel. Space here for this. So that is 1 block. This is actually for next week. Let's come down to my desk, which you'll see. So it is quilted and all the pixels are stitched. Take it out of the hoop. Put that back on there. So what we have is we have our no-show mesh, our batting, and our fabric, right? I'm going to use my 5.5-inch ruler and line it up. And this should be pretty accurate, right? This outside basting line, you're going to match it up to your 1/4-inch seam allowance, right? I want to stand up because I want to cut it accurately. I see so much better this way. Checking all 4 sides. So there's our little block, okay? Now this has all the 3 layers, but if we join it to our row like that, what you're gonna have is a hump right here, some thickness in that seam, right? So I like to just fold back, and it's so hard to see because I'm using a really light fabric for the top, right? And it's just sort of blending in together. But I'll fold in back that top fabric, and I'm going to trim away the batting and the no-show mesh without cutting that fabric, okay? So you're just going to carefully just do that. Some of you might hold it back with your ruler and trim it with your rotary cutter. Sometimes I slip, and then all of that is for nothing. So I like to do a little trim by hand. I just want to make sure that's the top. Where does this go? This is next week's row. This is the side I want to trim. So I'm going to hold that fabric back and just trim the batting and the no-show mesh. Sometimes I'll even hold it up like this because I can really see. I'm about a year past needing new glasses. Can I just tell you that? I put it off because I've just, trying to recover from, I would say I'm fully recovered from having my teeth done, but that was a process. So now I just have the fabric, right? The 1/4-inch seam allowance is just the fabric. No batting, no show mesh is gone. And I'm going to do it for this side too, where I'm joining it to the row. And now that seam's going to lay nice and flat. See that? Now it looks a little like wrinkly, right? We're going to flip that over and sew that with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. All right. Let me just double check, make sure. Yep. Gonna sew it. All right, and so for the big reveal, turn this iron on because I want to press this. See that space right there? I could either pick it apart and re-sew it because I don't think I was lined up exactly perfect. And that's probably what I'm going to do. Do you know what I'm saying? That space right there. I don't think I was exactly lined up. Or, watch this. Black fabric marker. And now you'd never know. No, I know my seam allowance was off. I could tell. Probably because I'm getting hangry and I have to go make umpteen million loaves of bread this evening for the bake sale tomorrow. But see what I mean by you could do little touch-ups like that? I plan on taking this apart and accurately sewing that seam allowance. But I'm not opposed to doing that either. See that? Who would know? So there we go. That is the embroidered version. This is actually next week's blocks. Do you have any guesses as to what this is going to be as we move down? If so, I would love to hear in the comment section. Embroidered version, applique version. I'm going to go back and fix that sometime in this upcoming week. And next week, we will take looks and peeks at painting, fabric markers, stuff like that for alternative ways to do this quilt. I think that sounds really fun. Okay. And I'm here for it. So I will see you next Friday. Let me come back to this screen right here. Next Friday. Okay. Let me take a sip of this drink. Oh, Wanda said, why not fold it over and sew it closer? Wanda, you're so smart. Give me a second. Now my seam allowance is off. It's not exactly lined up perfectly. That's better. Ta-da! See that? Okay, everybody. I look forward to hanging out with you next week. Chris said, is it Pac-Man? Good guess, Chris. Good guess. It's not Pac-Man, but that's a good guess. Karen's making 2. Yay, me too. I hope y'all have a fantastic weekend and a great week next week. Time flies by so fast, y'all. Before you know it, we're going to be doing some painting on fabric next week. Okay? Bye, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend.
In the quiet of the evening light, with needles dancing, stitching inside each patch of story, every thread a song binding love and fabric where we belong. Every stitch a whispered prayer, in every corner I find you there. Oh, sweet patchwork of our days, stitched together in so many ways, with every thread our lives entwined in this quilted love, our hearts aligned.